Hello ladies and gentlemen, it is me again, Insane Gorilla, and welcome back to my channel. This is What If Deku Was a Mandalorian? Yes, this is from the original What If Deku Was a Mandalorian on my channel. So this is what you can consider a redo with a mixture of making it a little bit better, slash a little bit more, well, kind of more warrior-like. Now, I will not explain the entire video. Go and watch my original Star Wars What If Deku Was a Mandalorian to get more information. And those of you who have already watched it and have loved it, welcome back to an OG series of mine. So, let's get on with the video, shall we? So, where we start this off is on Earth, as usual. Earth is in Star Wars universe, just gotta make that clear. It's also, if you ever watched Blue Fire 191, he explains that a lot better. So, where we are in the galaxy or far, far away is where Earth is. Now, on Earth, in Japan, in Mudatafu, where I believe Deku was living before he went to UA, a 5-year-old boy would be running around with, well, a fake gun, obviously, like a Nerf gun and all that, or hell, a water pistol, to be even better, as it's a really hot day. One that Japan had faced several times. If anybody's been to Japan and it's been a hot day, please let me know. As it's just a relatively fun day for Izuku and his mother, Inko. Inko is a woman with long, well, raven hair, not her usual green, but a still caring mother, as she had kept herself to herself. She knew, well, Minsky, Bakugo, only through Minsky's reputation of being a very hard-working woman who takes care of their 5-year-old son, Katsuki, who has a quirk of explosions. Now, Minsky and, well, Inko don't really know each other through face-to-face contact. They only know each other through their children. And that's not really saying much, considering Bakugo had started showing signs of becoming a bully at school. And Inko is, well, more of a stay-at-home mum, work from home and do stuff at home until her son goes to, well, school or even college. But she's mainly hoping for when he goes to school for long periods of time, she'll be able to go to work and actually earn money. As she would watch her son play in the park with a few other individuals. Of course, with obvious supervision from their other parents. Izuku made some friends, and their parents knew Inko, and they, for one, often said if she wanted to go to work and work in a company, they would be more than happy to work alongside her to look after Izuku. This did make Inko happy, as she was recently talking about it with one of her friends called Inda, and that was it. Her name was Inda, and that was all Inko could really remember of her name. Her last name was a bit of a mouthful, so they always just stuck to name basis. As Inko would be happy with her son, she would notice something in the corner of her eye, a shimmering of glass and a shimmering of steel. She would notice this from a mile away, because it was only of something she would ever remember. Something that even her friends did not know she was a part of. As she would walk away from some of her group circle, pick up her son and leave, making him ask why are they leaving, but only Inko to look at him with a kind smile, saying there's something that I forgot we needed to do today, so come on, let's go. Izuku, being 5, would not argue with his mother, knowing that she must have had something important. And on the way home, her grip on Izuku's hand would get tighter and tighter and tighter, as her nervousness starts building up, as she's constantly been seeing this glint now for a little while walking even home. Obviously someone's following. Someone that clearly knows who she is. As Inko does hear her son slightly whimper due to her grasp, and she just mentally apologises to her son, saying, I'm sorry Izuku, but I have a feeling we're being followed and I can't afford to make you scared right now. Little did she know she was making him scared, purely because she was holding onto his hand really tight. Izuku didn't want to really talk to his mum, saying that she's hurting him, because, hey, it's his mum. She worries. She must have been worried about something, or this thing is very important, and she's now worrying about it. But he wouldn't tell his mum to let go of his hand, because she was hurting him. Oh no, he would let his mum hold his hand, as a good little boy would. When Inko finally got to the house, she quickly shut the door, locked it, and bolted it, making Izuku rather nervous, because his mother slammed it hard enough for the whole house to most probably shake if it wasn't made out of, well, brick. And her bolting it means that she was obviously nervous about something, because Izuku noticed she'd only bolt the door shut if she was nervous and really worried. Izuku would ask her why she was nervous and why she was worried. Inko would just say that it's something that is from her past, and it was something she was hoping never to be found out about. As she explained, a banging on the door would soon come along, as there would be a voice on the other side saying, I know you're in there. Open the hell up. We have to talk. Izuku would quickly hush her son, as she'd just whisper, saying, go upstairs now, do not come back down, ever, until I say so. Izuku would shake his head, as he was about to say loudly no that he can't leave her, only for her to put her hand over his mouth, saying, Izuku, trust me. Izuku would honestly not want to go, but his mum's eyes showed him how scared she was. So he would agree and quickly run off, leaving Inko downstairs alone with the stranger banging on the door, constantly saying he knows she's in there. This person even got called her out, saying, I know who you are, Inko. Midoriya. House Midoriya. This got her nerves even worse, because somebody knew who she was, and she was from a house of people. And if anybody knows what I'm talking about, houses, I meant that in a term saying instead of clan, it is a house. From Clan Ren to, well, Clan Vizsla. I'm changing it to house, to the House of Ren, to the House of Vizsla. Back to the story, sorry. As Inko would panic more and more, she'd notice that some shadows were over her window into the kitchen/living room. Knowing if she darted into the living room to go and get, to hide, they would easily see her. And the hand would be placed on the window, but the hand would quickly leave, and the shadow would leave as well. Ingo, using her instincts and her warrior instincts, considering of the clan she's a part of, quickly bolted upstairs, grabbed her son, and dropped to the floor as an explosion would go off, shattering glass and blowing open the front and, the front window to the living room. Izuku was about to scream, only for Inko to hush him, saying, "Please be quiet," as a person would walk in. As Inko would quickly get up, go into her room, followed by her son, who had to stealthily follow. Although stealthily would be a understatement, considering that somebody was clearly downstairs throwing things around. So Ingo would get into her room, she would put her son underneath her bed, and she'd just whisper, "Stay here," as she'd go to the cupboard, open it with the stealthiness of a rancor, which made the person say, "I know you're here, Inko. Come out. Come out and show yourself. Fight me. Where's your warrior spirit? Don't tell me you're a coward like the rest of your cowardly kin." As Ingo would pull out something from the cupboard, Izuku wouldn't see what it was, but he could tell that it was heavy, considering Inko slightly grunted when she picked it up, and also hear her whisper, "I forgot how heavy this thing was." As Inko would walk away, Izuku, being Izuku, scared and worried for his mum, would soon follow after 2 minutes, as he would make his way to the door only to hear his mum shouting, or technically saying, "If you think I am scared of you, assassin, then you are clearly mistaken." As this assassin clearly was laughing at her, as he sorry about that. As this assassin would clearly just say, then why was she hiding like a coward in a room, obviously with her son? Perhaps if she's that weak, her son may actually prove more useful to the Empire than her worthless clan, or her worthless house. Inko glares, saying that she does not know what he's talking about, but he better well leave before she ends up removing what makes him a man, or removing his head. The assassin would laugh by pulling out two, metallic objects that even Izuku could only just barely hear. As this assassin would just say, "Then come and get me, and prove to me that warrior spirit that you should have had." Inko would jump down the stairs with the acrobaticness of a muscled out gymnast. As her swing would come down, sword would meet steel, as a battle would commence. Izuku, still wanting to figure out who his mother was, really, now that seeing her this side of her, he was really curious. So, slowly making his way downstairs, he would make his way outside, hearing the clashes out there. As he'd watch his mother, pretty much with cuts and bruises, considering she must have been hit and cut several times, pretty much slam the dull side of the blade into the side of his head, causing him to stumble. As he would just come back with two blades attached to his wrists, or to his elbows, really. If you don't know who I'm talking about, if you've ever played Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, the video game, then you would understand who these people are. As Inko would slash and slice, and even stab, Izuku would watch this individual with great ease dodge most of Inko's attacks, until Inko managed to get her foot underneath his leg, and kick his leg out from underneath him. It did cause this individual to slide to one side, causing a good gash to go up its his or hers left arm, only for Inko to get stabbed within the thigh by the right. She would shout in pain, while this individual wouldn't even shout out in pain at all, only for a foot to come up and kick Inko in the side of the head, and another foot to hit her smack in the jaw, sending her stumbling backwards and onto the floor. This individual would spin on its one remaining good hand and get back up, and pretty much walk over, blade ready, to stab Inko, only for this person to speak, saying she's just as weak as the rest of her cowardly kin on Mandalore. The Empire will soon be there to crush them. A blade would go down, only for a sound not heard by Zuko to be heard. The sound that of a rushing fire. This individual would look up to only receive a massive boot, a big enough boot to the face to send him flying backwards. A man in metal armour, with a jetpack of sorts, would land right on top of Inko. Not enough to actually hurt her, but enough to make her have a bit of a whiff of exhaust fluids. Or fuel, really. As the man would say, or man or woman, Zuko couldn't really hear, would just say, just in time. You're lucky I was tracking you down, sister. As Inko would slowly stand behind the individual, as she would just say, took you long enough to finally figure out where I went. As this individual would not even look at her, only giving her a slight fist bump on her shoulder, saying, never underestimate me. You may have been the best to sneak around and get stuff where you weren't meant to be, but I'm still good enough to track you down whenever it was necessary. It just took me a little while, that's all. As this individual would tell her to stay down and settle down for a while he goes and deals with, while they go and deal with this one assassin. Inko would shout "Bay," only to hear more sounds of jetpacks, as around about 4 other individuals would land. As they'd all, 2 of them would be male, the other would clearly be female, even by Zuko's standards. As she would simply look at Inko, grab the weapon that she was holding, put it to the ground, and attend to her wounds. As it would just be a sudden spray of a sudden liquid, making Inko hiss. As the other Mandalorians would go and attack this, as you might probably tell, they are Mandalorians, Izuku doesn't know that, would go and attack this one individual, who would be dodging and weaving, but not being able to attack, being put on the defensive. As this other female Mandalorian would get up and dart off to help her comrades, Inko would walk back to her son, saying what you should never do is watch a battle of, deadly proportions. Of course, Izuku would wonder why deadly, only to hear someone scream, looking over to see the individual that was attacking his mum have a hole suddenly in his chest. Izuku would freeze, seeing a man get killed, and Inko would just sigh, saying that's why. As she would walk, up to him, hold his hands and pick him up, and pretty much walk towards the people that just killed the man. As these people got closer, Izuku kind of got worried and wondering why his mother wasn't so afraid of them. As the lead individual would turn around and remove a helmet, revealing very feministic face with long raven black hair as well. In a similar look to Inko, even though her eye on her left side was fogged over, and her left eye was a sparkling blue, while Inko's was green. As Inko would walk up, she'd simply ask how was their father doing. As this female Mandalorian would just sigh, saying, "He's a mess." As a smile would come over her face, but I think he'll do better, knowing that he has a nephew now. As Izuku would look towards this female, this woman who clearly knew his mother, as he would just ask his mum who was she. As this woman would look towards Inko and Izuku, as she would just simply coo, saying that she can finally meet her nephew now and hopefully be almost like a older sister, even if she is his aunt. Izuku would look at her weirdly, saying, "I don't have an aunt," only for this woman to chuckle, saying, well, your mother never really introduced us, considering you've been here for 5 years, living a pampered life. Only for her to receive a slap to the back of the head from Inko herself, saying, calm down, he hasn't actually been having a good life just yet. When he reached the age of 8, I was about to start teaching him the ways of the Mandalorian, the way of our people. And just because I have gotten rusty over the years doesn't mean that I still don't know on how to put you down. I still know how you fight, sister. As her sister would chuckle, scratching the back of her head, saying, yeah, I know. As the other Mandalorians would look in between this reaction to sisters now meeting each other. But they would all look towards Izuku and smile. Underneath their helmets, of course. After all, they're still in enemy territory, and they don't particularly want the innocent people to see their faces. Even if this fight was out in the open. Because come on, an explosion and suddenly someone getting kicked in the face by an individual, and all of a sudden multiple individuals coming out from the sky. It will indefinitely send alarm bells to all the authorities. So Inko would throw Izuku gently towards his aunt, who grabbed him and put him in a death-like hug, just squeezing and letting him know that he is safe. And Inko would walk back inside, open up a door that leads to a cellar, and she would walk in and get told to keep Izuku where he is. So Izuku would ask his aunt for her name, considering he never really got to know her when he was younger. His aunt would smile, giving him a kiss on the side of his head, as she would just say her name is Miran Midoriya, his aunt and all-around badass, making Izuku kind of chuckle, as he would remember the one time his mum got really angry at someone, as he would just chuckle, saying, no, the badass part goes to mum, considering she can kick someone extremely hard. As the woman would pout, saying that her sister is not as badass as her. After all, she can withhold several weapons that can actually do some real damage. As a little conversation between her and her nephew would form into a little bit of a competition who can come up with the best insults, making the fellow Mandalorians sort of sweat drop, as one of them would ask, saying, and she's meant to be the second in command to Mandalore. She's acting more like a child, an inexperienced youngling, than anything else. If he was paying more attention, he would have received the death glare that she just sent him. Although his other compatriots saw this, they didn't really want to tell him. They all knew that she can get a lot more violent when she needs to be. But for the sake of their friend, one of them told him, saying that if he's not careful, she may end up castrating him. Making this Mandalorian quickly cover up his manhood, just in case. Of course, Izuku was not paying much attention to the poor man's plight. But his other male companion would just simply sigh, saying, and this is why you never have a girlfriend. Of course, Inko would finally return, as Izuku would see her in armour, her face obviously being revealed still, as it was almost a grey and blue, armoured uniform. Even with the jetpack, the strange sword-like weapon she had strapped to her back as well, two, guns on her hips, holstered of course, and one gun in her arms, or mainly in her non-shooting hand, as it is a rifle. And she'd walk up with her helmet in her in her right hand, As she'd simply chuckle, saying, "What's with the look, Izuku? You look like you haven't seen me in years." As Izuku would generally be shocked seeing his mum in such outfit. And she would chuckle as she'd put on her helmet, as she'd just shout for Mandalorians, "We return to Mandalore." As she instantly took charge, even if her sister sort of gave her an angry look, saying that I'm the one in charge here. As Inko would just blow her raspberry in underneath her helmet, making it sound rather metallic, making almost all of the other Mandalorians, apart from her sister, sweat drop, again, including Izuku this time. But with a rush of engines, they all took off. And not 2 minutes later, Pro Heroes returned, along with all the police, to stop the fight, only to see a destroyed house and a dead body. Of course, they treated it as a murder scene, and they got an image of who it was. Strange men and women in metal armor calling themselves Mandalorians. They even saw Inko Midoriya walk out with Mandalorian armor on and take her son, claiming that they're all Mandalorians. Of course, Earth wouldn't understand who the Mandalorians were. But with the Mandalorians, they'd fly straight up to a ship that Izuku saw had some sort of, docking bay for them, as they'd all land crouching, holding on to seats that it was apparently a part of. As Izuku would hyperventilate due to the lack of oxygen, due to how high they are. As the landing the drop bay doors would close and fill up with air and oxygen, making Izuku quickly breathe and gasp down a lot of air. Mira would just simply chuckle, saying, "Don't worry, Izuku, you'll get used to it. After all, you'll begin training as soon as we hit Mandalore's surface." Ingo would stand and walk to her son, grabbing him out of her sister's hands, and pretty much putting him on her chest plate, telling him to breathe calmly and softly, as after all, what her sister just said, his aunt just said as well, was actually true. There's no way that he can now be innocent, seeing them kill a assassin sent here to kill him and her. So, for hours they would talk. Ingo would explain everything about his Mandalorian history and his ancestry. Turns out the Midoriyas were actually an offshoot of an older Mandalorian culture, one that didn't evolve around clans. These Mandalorians, called the houses of the houses instead of clans. House Midoriya was one of the oldest and yet more covert Mandalorian, units and houses. They were also the first ones to agree to the new Mandalore. Duchess Satine of Mandalore before her untimely death by Darth Maul. And they were also the last to actually take up arms against Maul's new Death Watch. Of course, if you haven't watched the Star Wars, the Clone Wars series, then you won't know who Darth Maul or the new Death Watch members would be. So, they would continue explaining all about Mandalore and who Mandalore is. Mandalore isn't just a person, it is the name of the planet that they are from. So, when they finally reach Mandalore, they actually land and not dive out of the doors, the launch doors that they launched from to help Inko out from. Of course, when they land, Izuku would look out and see a barren wasteland and a huge domed structure behind him. As he would ask what happened to the scenery, why is it like a desert wasteland. As Inko would explain that it is because that the Mandalorians, had done some really stupid ideas. Through fighting countless millennia, they eventually destroyed their own home. The capital city of Sindari, which is where they are right now, is the capital of the Mandalorian system and the Mandalorians themselves. Ingo had been here for 15 years, and when she left, it was because she was bearing him, and she couldn't allow anybody to see her with her pregnancy, due to her being the heiress of the house. She was meant to take Mandalore's place if he hadn't passed it on to her sister. So they would pretty much walk in, saying that Izuku is pretty much the prince of the house, and soon to be heir if she takes the mantle of heir of the house, the monarch of the house of Midoriya's. Well, Mira, hang on. Okay, sorry about that. So, as I was saying, Izuku would pretty much get the idea. If his mother doesn't take up the mantle of clan head, or house head, like the monarch, then it might be a little bit more dangerous for him to be around. Considering not everybody liked Inko for who she was, claiming that she was un-Mandalorian. But on the ship that's more open, they'd be flying through a city, more glass than it is anything else. But he would see plenty of Mandalorians in armoured suits, some with white colourings, some with dark black, some with crimson, and some with blue. Of course, there would be multiple others like green, orange, purple, pink, and, obviously, yellow. As Inko would find herself at the foot of where Duchess Satine used to live, in the palace. Now had been changed into a Mandalorian command and control point, with multiple areas and multiple screens and training areas for the Mandalorians. So Izuku would end up walking with his mum, going through the whole thing, until they reached the actual throne room that didn't have any glass, symbolizing that this had been recent. And by the window on the far side would be a man in splendid armour, of not just House Midoriya, but of Mandalore. A Mandalorian armour set that showed he is the Mandalore. As he would just be standing there, looking out of the window, not even paying attention to the people approaching. Of course, the man would then speak as if he already knew who it was. It's been 6 years. Obviously, Izuku's 5, and Inko left a whole year because of her pregnancy. 6 years since she left. 6 years since she had not been around. And 6 years since he had heartbreak. Not only for his first and eldest and the head, soon to be head of the house, vanishing, but 6 years since his wife had died, due to her vanishment. Not only was it the greatest source of disappointment and disgrace for their household, but it was also great disappointment not being able to see his daughter, his eldest, who just up and vanished. Inko would look to the man and say that she apologizes, but she had to hide. Not everybody liked her, and with her certain, faculty and charge now, she couldn't have risked the life that she had growing inside her belly. The man would look straight into her eyes through his helmet, as he pretty much spit it out that he is angry, disappointed, and almost too pissed off to even allow her to return. But if it wasn't for her sister, he would have declared her no longer a member of the household. As Inko would look down, as she'd even kneel in front of him, taking off her helmet and showing her face, saying if he wishes to strike her down, she will not resist. This action causing Izuku to panic, saying, "Mum, I don't want you to die." Only for Inko to hush him, saying that it's her foolishness that almost got him killed. And it was her foolishness for leaving her father behind without telling him where she was going and for why. And this was also the Mandalore, so he needed to also show a lot of respect. The man is extremely powerful and doesn't take, disrespect too well, especially from his subordinates, so he needs to be quiet as much as possible. Izuku would nod rather quickly, understanding the severity of this situation. Now this would not go past Mandalore at all, seeing and also hearing the boy call her Mum. Understanding that the boy is his nephew, or not really nephew, his grandson. Which swelled his heart with pride that his little girl had actually had a family of her own, just without a husband, which is also a little bit more disgraceful. But he was not really paying much attention at the moment. He would question his daughter about her husband later. But right now, punishment is necessary, considering she left without saying a modicum of a goodbye. So he would reach down to his belt, and he would pull a handle off of his belt, which confused Izuku, only for a pitch black blade to come out. As he would wave it in front of Inko's face, she would not even flinch. As he would ask her, "Do you, Inko Midoriya, take the responsibility you should have had years ago before you left? Do you accept to become the new head of clan or house Midoriya?" Inko would just simply respond with, "I do." "Do you, Inko Midoriya of House Midoriya, accept your due punishments for abandoning your duty? Even if it was for a good reason, do you still accept your punishments?" "I do," is all she would respond with. As Mandalore would simply raise the blade, saying, "I, Mandalore, leader of the Mandalorians, hereby sentence you to 4 slaps around the head." Inko would look up to receive 4 slaps around the back of the head, 1 from her father, 1 from her sister, and 2 from 2 other Mandalorians. Inko would look at the other 2 Mandalorians as they would remove their helmets, revealing their faces. Inko would understand who they were, saying Nero, or Nira, and Sira. Nero and Sira both smile, saying, "Hello, cuz, how you doing?" Yes, they are all her cousin. They are both her cousins, and Izuku's great, aunts and uncles. As Izuku would look at them with shock, as they'd both laugh, seeing his complete shocked look. As Nero would pretty much chuckle, saying, "Look at the little chibi, he has no idea." As Izuku would pout rather cutely, as both women just couldn't help but glump him in a hug, saying that it's so nice to see their their great nephew. As Izuku would struggle to breathe, but eventually they would break the hug, obviously seeing that his face has gone purple. But soon after that, Inko, her father, her nephew and her two cousins, and her sister would all walk away, going to different areas just to go and talk. Mainly a huge, living room slash bedroom slash dining room slash kitchen slash everything else, apart from a bedroom slash bathroom. Zuko would walk around, just wanting to see everything. Hell, the adults were just too busy talking to take much notice of him. Of course, they would suddenly stop when they hear a gunshot go off. Rushing to where it was, they would see Zuko on the ground holding his eye. Fear took over them all, as the two great aunts and the aunt of Zuko personally would all immediately pull out their pistols and rifles and immediately secure the area, wanting to know if someone attacked their nephew slash great nephew. Even Mandalore himself would be on guard, along with his mother, along with Inko as well, as they'd all see a single blaster pistol with smoke coming out of it, just dropped at Zuko's feet. One of them would immediately put two and two together, saying, "Oh, you silly boy, you didn't know, but I hope you now learn your lesson. Don't touch a blaster pistol at your age." As Nero would pick it up, showing that it was the blaster pistol, Zuko must have picked it up and accidentally shot himself in the face. Ingo would still look at her son with worry. Seeing that he had a smoking eyelid, she opened to see her son's eye had completely fogged over due to how bright the blast was. Seeing that his eye is now no longer useful, she asked if they could simply remove the eye and replace it with a cybernetic one. But Zuko told him not to do it, saying that he wants this to be a reminder never touch weapons unless he is ready to use them. This would unfortunately make a bit of a conundrum, considering he had to learn on how to look out of his only right eye. Easier said than done. And even at the age of 5, it was a big decision. Time skip 3 years later, Izuku, age 6. That's 1 year. So 1 year later, sorry. Zuko, age 8, would begin his training with Mandalore himself, saying that it's grandfather and grandson time to bond. And when I mean by bonding, I mean Mandalore beat the living shits out of Zuko's skull, making Zuko whimper in pain all the time, and thinking his mother would come over and cuddle him. He would only see her giving him a blank look and a shake of the head, saying that "I will not come and coddle you." This would break his heart, but Mandalore would just say, "You have a lot to learn, youngster, but it's learning on the fly, which we Midorians often are known for." As he would simply kneel down, pick him up, and dust him off, and simply walk away from him in the arena that they are in, as he would just simply say "again." Zuko would drop his weapon, saying, "No, I won't do it anymore. I'm clearly too exhausted," only to be grabbed by his grandfather figure, as he would simply snarl, saying, "You are a Mandalorian, where is your Mandalorian pride? Have pride in your skills, have pride within yourself. You are no Mandalorian if you cannot at least hold your ground. At your age, I was already able to hold my ground against my father. Your mother was the same with me, along with your aunts. Now stand up and fight. You're not a child, you're a Mandalorian. And Mandalorian children are meant to take out rancors by themselves." Of course, that was a bold-faced lie, but he had to amp up his grandson somehow, even if his daughter would flay him alive for how rough he was actually being with her son. Of course, Inko was still the loving mother figure, and she would still skin her father alive for how much damage he has done to her son. But he needed to show Izuku that he needed to fight, as he is Mandalore. And he is a Mandalorian. So Izuku would unfortunately be told that he's not leaving this room until he can actually land a good hit on him. And that is exactly what happened. Izuku, though, would be used as a punching bag by Mandalore himself, which only hurt him more and more, seeing that his grandson clearly doesn't have it within him. Eventually, after the full 2 days of Mandalore trying to get his grandson to actually do something, he'd eventually quit, saying that he's no Mandalorian, he's nothing but a coward. And he would walk away. Inko would look at her son with disappointment, something that Izuku didn't think his mother would ever be able to do. And she would walk away, along with all the other Mandalorians, his aunts, walking too. As one of them would look over, saying, "You're weak and pathetic, you're no Mandalorian, at least my grandson, my great-nephew, would have actually put up a fight. He clearly does not have the Mandalorian spirit, nor does he have the Mandalorian way." How disgraceful, and how disappointing. Hearing that from his aunt, one of his great aunts, would hurt. But Izuku would get up and run, crying, knowing that he couldn't truly be a Mandalorian because he didn't have it in him. Of course, the other Mandalorians would watch. A lot of them with disdain because A, of the weakness, and B, because it was clear that he was just too useless. And that would also cause a few problems and divides within the Mandalorians that were currently in the palace. Mandalore had work to do, and yet he was here trying to get a boy that was clearly no Mandalorian to fight. They would have words with Mandalore themselves if they weren't too scared of getting their heads cut off due to the dark saber that the man was wearing, constantly holding. After all, he did claim it out of rightful combat from Bo-Katan Kryze, and he is now called Mandalore. With Izuku would be running until he'd run out of Mandalore, the capital of Sindari itself, onto the landing pad, and pretty much finding a place to hide, just to get away from the pain. The pain of people seeing him as weak, the pain of seeing such a useless and weak individual. He heard everything from the Mandalorians around him, calling him weak and pathetic. Why was he born into such a powerful house if he was so weak and useless? He was pampered too much, and he was clearly too weak. And some even Mandalorians said he would just be better off dying, because no Mandalorian would want such a weak offspring. So Izuku just did his best but hide. Hiding was all he could do. Hiding away from his problems, and hiding away from his mother, his grandfather, his aunts, and his uncles that he had met. That is until a Mandalorian would find him. This Mandalorian would sigh seeing Izuku. As he would walk up to Izuku would see him seeing the Mandalorian there, and also the colours of, House Midoriya. This would scare Izuku personally, as he would just back off. This Mandalorian would quickly use his jump back and jump behind him, grabbing hold of Izuku and telling him to calm down. He's not here to berate him, but he's here to find out why he will not fight. So the Mandalorian would sit down, removing his helmet, revealing a bald head with a moustache, with a slight beard, just going from the bottom of his nose around to his face, to the bottom of his mouth. is he'd simply ask Izuku why will he not fight. As this Mandalorian's name is Kane, and think of Command and Conquer Kane, and yes, he does have the voice of the actor as well. As Izuku would explain to Kane why he refuses to fight, and why he can never truly be a true Mandalorian due to how scary it actually is. Izuku's only 8 and he still has fears. He wasn't born in the Mandalorian culture where the fear wouldn't actually control him. He was born in on a world where his fears were only for not being protected by pro-heroes of Earth. Yes, Kane knew about Earth. Hell, he was the one flying the ship at the time. So he knew all about Earth. Kane would actually sympathize with Izuku, as Kane would just simply say, fear is a natural thing to have, Izuku. It is so natural. Your mother even has it. Your grandfather has it. Your aunts have it as well. Hell, even he has fears as well. He was not actually born in the Mandalorian culture either. He was actually born on Concordia. He wasn't born on Mandalore. He wasn't even born properly. He was a, bastard child. He was born to a non-Mandalorian. And his mother, straight up abandoned him, calling him a bastard child. His father managed to somehow grab hold of his mother when she was just only 15. Unlike his mother as well, she gave birth to him as well on Concordia. But unlike Inko, who showered him with love, at such an early age, around about 4 years old, his mother called him a bastard child and threw him onto the streets, got on a ship and left Concordia, going straight to a different world, never to be seen again. Kane had to learn on the streets of Concordia, and he had fears. He had to fight and almost had a few times died due to the brutality of the way he was brought up until Mandalore found him. Of course, this was also a year into the Clone Wars. So when Mandalore, Izuku's uncle, Izuku's grandfather, finally, cornered him and actually got him trained as a Mandalorian, it took him still quite a few years to get out of his fears. As Kane would continue explaining that he had multiple fears of giant wild animals on Concordia. Hell, he'd even faced a rancor at one point on a different world, and he was terrified. There are things far more terrifying than a just simple vibroblade, a blaster, and a jetpack. The Mandalorians are not actually as feared as people, would tell them. Some children on different worlds would be told scary stories about Mandalorians, and how Mandalorians can kill without a heartbeat. That is not actually 100% true, but 90% of the time it is true. This would scare Izuku even more, but Kane would explain that the rumours that they constantly hear about Mandalorians is half of the time very, very convoluted. Not just because of the stories of Mandalorians being able to kill over 1,000 people without a heartbeat, but also because of their hardcore warrior ways. Sorry, got my words mixed up there. As Kane would explain to Izuku even more, that just because that they are warriors doesn't mean they can't have compassion, which Inko clearly has for Izuku. Otherwise, she would have just insulted him by coddling him every single day he got hurt. She had to honour not only her clan, or her house, by not showing any signs of weakness, but she also had to get him to show that he had honour to stand up on his own. If he couldn't stand up on his own, then it wasn't worth her time and effort to raise him. He has to show Inko that he has his honours, and he will be honourable. As Cain would then stand up after his little rant and little speech, he'd then turn to Izuku saying, "I am willing to teach you all about the Mandalorian ways, but you have to promise me one thing: you'll not complain and you'll not back down. If you back down, you are showing weakness, and you backing down in front of Mandalore showed that you are extremely weak. And it will not do for the son and grandson of Mandalore to back down for such an unworthy thing, such as simple pride." So Hisashi would, not Hisashi, so Cain would walk away. Izuku would swiftly follow, wanting to, be trained. He will not simply tell Cain that his little speech actually told him to stop being a little wimp, but Cain already knew that the speech did its work. As he would go to a different training ground far away from the central city of Sindari. And for the next few years, Izuku would be taught everything of the Mandalore from his uncle. As Cain and Izuku would continue training, Inko would be more and more worried, along with her sister and her two cousins, along with the uncles and all that. All of them would begin becoming worried for Izuku's safety because none of them had seen him for almost 2 years. Hell, there had been a full manic search all over Sindari just to try and find him. And when nobody found him, nobody could even find Cain, so they must have gone somewhere. So a lot of ships went off-world. If they stayed on-world and actually scouted out, they would have found a small training area. And they would have found Izuku and Cain practicing, and even Izuku fighting with Cain like a wild animal, but being taught like one too. So, more and more years would pass. Inko would go into a more and more big depression and be more and more angry with everybody else. She would stop turning up to to house meetings. She would stop eating. She would stop drinking, because she'd spend more and more time depressed and searching for her son. Eventually, after several more years, Inko would finally be told by her father to stop searching. If they can't find Cain or Izuku, then they both must be dead. Something that he didn't want to tell her, but he needed to. She was tearing herself apart. The house was about to declare her unfit, which they had said multiple times that she was unfit to lead. But Mandalore had kept fervent, saying that she needed time to get over her grief. Of course, this wouldn't help out much, because of the clans wanting a vote of no confidence because of Mandalore, showing quite clearly his daughter favoritism. Even Mira would say that she is now starting to become unfit to lead, which would honestly hurt Mandalore most, because his second daughter would always stand up for her sister. So seeing her saying that she is not worthy to lead anymore showed Mandalore that his daughter had clearly lost it, due to her son not being around. So Mandalore would go to his daughter's, home, and open the door after receiving no word for a while. So after he opened, he found her on the floor. As he'd panic and call over for medics immediately, they found out that Inko attempted to overdose herself on narcotics, as she had truly lost it. Her despair was too great, and she had started taking drugs to try and end her life. As Mandalore would see the amount of death sticks that she had. Of course, it would take a while for all the drugs to get pumped out of her system. She'd be put on lockdown and put in a psychiatric ward. Now, with Izuku, age 17, would finally stop his training. His uncle Kane had taught him all that he could, and actually finally was able to get Izuku to come out of the shell that he had put himself in. Kane would finally even take Izuku to the great forge underneath Mandalore secretly to make his armor. His armor would almost be as beautiful as it was deadly. For any Mandalorian, that armor is like a second skin, and Mandalore himself would be impressed. But Kane also knew that Mandalore would be pissed off that Kane had suddenly up and left with Izuku. But once Izuku had shown how much he had grown, Kane was pretty sure that Mandalore would forgive him. His mother, on the other hand, he doubted it. He knew of Inko's rapid deterioration, and should most probably be too scared to allow her son to leave her side ever again. Kane knew that he made a big mistake, but hey, what can you do? Results are results. So Kane and Izuku would head into the forge. Izuku would grab his new armor and leave. Kane would then teach him on wearing his armor like a second skin, which took him up to the age of 17. He would finally teach him the flying phoenix, using a jetpack in combat. And finally, when they returned home to Sendari, everybody would be shocked to see the little squirt of an 8-year-old turn into a 17-year-old. Which made everybody impressed, but also kind of angry that Kane had hidden Mandalore's grandchild. Of course, there would be an uproar, and Kane would explain everything that he had done. Not just to simply hurt Inko, but to also hurt a little bit of Mandalore for not thinking of a different way to teach. Of course, Mandalore would hear of this. That is after Kane had went in to the throne room and told Mandalore to his face that he had unfairly treated Izuku as if he was a true-born Mandalorian, which technically he was and wasn't. Izuku needed a different way of training, and Kane was more than happy to teach Izuku differently. Of course, this would make everybody kind of pissed, including Mandalore, who threatened Kane with Darksaber. Kane wouldn't even budge. So Mandalore would tell Kane to explain why he didn't inform him immediately of where he and Izuku were, because everybody had gone on a frenzy trying to find him. As Kane would simply say that he was training. He was training Mandalore's grandson differently, in a way that it was easier for him to learn. Once Izuku started learning from Kane, he picked it up rather rapidly because of Kane's teaching methods, which was not to swamp him with punches and kicks, making him look like a pincushion. This would also how can I say it? This would also make Mandalore's hackles go a little bit haywire, because he was also being insulted, saying that his teaching methods were not good for Izuku. All Mandalore wanted was the best for Izuku. He didn't want to truly hurt him, but he needed to, because he needed to teach Izuku the Mandalorian culture. But here was Kane, someone who didn't truly have anything to do with Izuku, teaching him for near on 12 to 17, so pretty much all the way up to his 17th birthday. As Kane would even explain, the reason why he did it was because Izuku had admitted that he would never be a true Mandalorian when he was around about 10. 2 years after Kane had took him, Izuku opened up to him and told him that he was too scared to be a true Mandalorian because he actually had nothing truly special about him. And that's why it took him so long as well to truly become a true Mandalorian, because of his fears. But after a while, Kane would finally bring the story to an end by saying, and that is the end of our training trip, I had taught him all about the flying phoenix, and he is almost as a natural with a vibro blade as he is with a blaster. Almost as if somebody, as he'd look towards, well, nearer, Izuku's aunt, or one of Izuku's aunts, as if someone had truly taught him how to use the blade properly. But he would also decline the, thrashing he was about to get by flying out of the way from the aunts and uncles who wanted to hurt Kane for doing what they wanted to apologise Izuku for doing to him. Kane had also told them how much ferocity Izuku had due to his anger against the people who had hurt him so badly. He was only 8, for Christ's sake. But luckily Izuku wasn't there, so Izuku's POV, Izuku was just simply exploring and re-familiarising himself with the, castle or palace of Mandalore. He'd be walking through everything, even just casually exploring, really. Like I said, just getting used to the layout again. After all, he hadn't been there for near on God knows how long now. He must have been there for around about, out there since he was 8. He honestly couldn't remember how long it had been since he'd been in the palace, because he's been nothing but training. So, he would walk through several places. He would even accidentally open a door and walk in, thinking that it was just to lead out to another corridor, only for him to hear a woman scream. Izuku, since he was looking down, would look up, seeing a woman holding a towel around her waist. Well, not just around her waist, but around her chest. Her eyes showed absolute fury and anger. Izuku would understand that this was a bad timing to bump into an unfortunate girl who was unfortunately completely nude, and the only thing holding her decency and modesty was 2 towels. Izuku would quickly run up to the door, open it, and get out, bowing and apologising for accidentally bumping into her, only for him to dodge a blade going past his head as the woman was charging up to him, shouting, "Bloody pervert! Get back here and take your punishment like a man." This would go on for 2 hours of Izuku running, dodging, and hopping over, blades, over walls, flying away, only to suddenly face a fist to the face by a flying pretty much full-on naked Mandalorian female, who socked him so hard he went plummeting, with her thoroughly on top of him. As a punch to the face here and another punch to the face there would be because of her straddling his waist. And hell, her fury was so much she didn't even take much notice that she was on his waist and directly on top of his pelvis and his groin. So, with her furiously beating his face in while they plummet, a jetpack would finally fire off, allowing a slower and slower descent, even if Izuku's half out cold due to her punching him in the face. And when they landed, she finally got off and kicked him once in the head and walked off, very angry and very embarrassed, because not only is she still naked, but she's now in public with just 2 towels, and that's it. And if it wasn't for the other Mandalorians taking, barely any notice of this, and even if they did, she would be incredibly even embarrassed still. So she walked off, just grumbling about bloody 2-faced perverts, not minding their own business, and not looking of whatever door they are walking through. With Izuku still on the floor, he would eventually come around. After all, a Mandalorian would drop, some water over his head, forcing him to cough and splutter and get up. This Mandalorian would be another woman with long, crimson hair, crimson armour, and a leg that had clearly been, sliced off, replaced with a metal leg. They should kneel down and give him a hand up. They should simply ask this young Mandalorian if they are okay. After all, she had been walking around and saw him face down, or on the ground, bloody and beaten. Izuku would scratch the back of his head, saying that he accidentally bumped into another female Mandalorian who was in nothing but in a towel. This other Mandalorian would just simply mouth "oh" and simply chuckle and hit him in the shoulder, saying, "Well, at least you now know hell have no fury like a woman scorned." And she would just giggle, saying that it should teach him a lesson not to bump into any female Mandalorians. Not all women love a man just casually popping in to see them in their skivvies. Izuku would blush, saying that it was just an accident. The Mandalorian would just laugh, saying that it's no need to apologise to her. After all, she wasn't the one he accidentally bumped into, naked and just wearing a towel. They should cheekily grin at him, telling him that if he ever did that to her, she'd give him one hell of a show. Then she'd walk off, giggling, hearing him splutter out, "What the fuck?" Izuku would then hear a jetpack being fired, as he'd look up to see Kane, as he would be landing along with Mandalore and one other Mandalorian. As this Mandalorian would just shout, saying, "This is the pervert who walked into my room, Mandalore. I declare the Raman Binhara, personal honours, be shown, and we'll fight." As Mandalore would sigh, saying, "Izuku, next time watch where you're going, and you have to either accept or be dishonoured entirely. And not only means your personal dishonour, but the entire household of the Midoriyas will be dishonoured too." As this female Mandalorian would remove the helmet, revealing not long brown hair, as this woman would scream, saying that this pervert is your grandson. He's not even big enough to be even a remotely appropriate adult. Mandalore would look at her with confusion, saying, "This is my grandson you are talking about, and I'll be damned if you disrespect him any more than you've already done. So, Rin, House Rin member, keep your mouth shut." And Izuku would just say, "What is the Raman Binhara?" As Mandalore would look to him, saying the Raman Binhara is a Mandalorian death game. But since she only wants to have your personal honours, it doesn't mean that she's gonna kill you. We had managed to change that rule on killing unless there is blood to truly be shed. You have to get her personal honours, and she has to get yours. It has to be in a place that has to be accessible. So that means no jetpacks. Izuku would then agree, having to participate in this Mandalorian, honor duel. So Izuku would have his personal honours, his helmet, his full armour as his personal honour. The first, All Might edition toy he got when he was 4. The book he had read when he was 12, due to Kane. And his last honour was the picture of Kane and him over a dead Rancor on a world called, Ryloth. So, Izuku would have all those personal honours spread out. He would then have to go looking for, the House Ren members' personal honours too. And with a good scrap from this female Mandalorian, Izuku would get to know her personal style of fighting. And when he did, it was easy for him to track her down. He found her first, Mandalorian honour which was of a purple scrunchie, or a scrunchie variant in Star Wars. Izuku would look at this scrunchie with a bit of bewilderment, as he would just honestly say to himself, she calls herself a Mandalorian and yet she has some sort of scrunchie like this? So he would walk off. Unknowing to him, this Mandalorian female had also found 2 of his personal honours. The image of him and Kane over a Rancor, and his armour. So she would go off to find more of his honours. Izuku had then found one of her second honours. And this honour was a little bit more tricky to get to. He had to cross a small ravine that had a very large drop over a very small tightrope. So he had to tiptoe his way across to get to the personal honour. And when he found it, his face heated up, as it was a purple thong. Well, not even a purple thong really. It was a thong with different patterns, with a note saying, if you dare do anything naughty to my thong, I am going to kill you. I would have got a different personal honour, but this was honestly my favourite pair of panties to wear. So do anything perverted and I'll kill you, regardless. Izuku would hold them with a little bit of, scarcity, as he would just hope and pray that she doesn't kill him just for simply touching them. As he would put them in a bag so he doesn't hold on to them all the time. As he'd find quite swiftly on a rifle with the words of, honour and, the honours of one are the honours of many. And it must be a personal heirloom because it had a name on it. The name was called Torian. Izuku didn't understand the name of Torian, and if you've ever played Star Wars The Old Republic, the MMORPG Bounty Hunter, you'd understand who Torian is. As Izuku would swiftly walk away, he would find one more before the 5th. This would be a image of a clan, or a household with pure white and gold armour, as the words would be of House Wren. So the woman he is fighting and facing off against for personal honours was a member of House Wren. Good to know. So Izuku would continue moving on to find even more personal honours to hopefully win this Mandalorian honour game. And with that, he found the last honour. The first ever kill of, you can have a guess of what was it killed of. I'll give you a hint. It is what Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker faced off against before they met Hondo Anaka. So, Izuku finally grabbed the head of this creature and walk all the way back to the starting area of his, personal honours. As he'd finally get there, he would see, most of his personal honours were gone. Quite clearly that this girl from House Wren had quite clearly gotten to his honours and had easily taken them. So when he finally reached his last honour, which was his first ever limited edition toy of All Might, it was not touched and it was not a fake. So quite clearly she could not get to it or could not find it. So when he finally rang a bell and walked to where Mandalore was, he found the Mandalorian female raging at her personal belongings being taken. As Izuku would quickly throw the bag with her panties in it, as he would just simply say, if you're ever going to throw your underwear into this, make sure that it's that the person who's going to have to hold it isn't a guy. Because no offense, I had an atomic blush out of that. That is the first time I've ever held a woman's pair of panties before, and I do not wish to hold them again. The woman would blush, and she would just apologise, saying that this wasn't my first option. I was going to get something else, but somebody else was using it at the time, so I couldn't really, do anything about it. Mandalore would look at her weirdly, as he would just say, so you put your panties there for this game for a reason. As Mandalore would just shake his head and just walk off, saying, well, Izuku has won because he's got all your personal honours. Just don't do anything stupid. Like, insult her again, Izuku. As he would walk off to go and inform Inko of her son's return, and also drink a lot of deadly grade alcohol just to get a buzz. Izuku would just simply look at this woman who still has the atomic blush but is starting to slowly disappear, as you just simply ask, so I guess this is done, hey? As she would just nod, saying, yes, I couldn't get to your last, personal honour, because I couldn't even find it. You hid it too well. Yes, Izuku would just nod, not noticing that she was putting on the panties underneath her armour. Quite clearly, she was blushing because she was actually removing her armour, her under armour, to put on the underwear. Clearly, she was actually using the underwear at the time, as she had to take them off to put down as her personal honour. So it was honour for her to know that he disliked having to hold on to her panties while she was not wearing any. So she would not tell him that those panties were the ones she was currently wearing, and the ones that he had in the bag were the ones that she had to take off just to prove or hope that he wouldn't look or put too much thought into it, which he didn't, which made her very grateful. But it also meant that he wouldn't have paid much notice if she was most probably butt-ass naked in front of him anyway. So her just shouting bloody pervert only made him look, because he was wanting to know who was shouting at him. So he wouldn't have paid much attention to her anyway, which was either a blessing in disguise for her or an absolute, annoyance. As she would just sigh, as Izuku would just say, we may have started off on the wrong foot, so let's try again. I'm Izuku Midoriya of House Midoriya. As the woman would look at him and just simply sigh, saying, yeah, perhaps we should really start this off on a better foot, it should just simply say, Idril of House Ren. And that is where I'm ending it, people. Hope you like, comment, and subscribe.